Hello everybody and welcome back to another Atris Studios tutorial. Today what we're going to do is we're basically going to set up both the saving system for our items as well as being able to interact with objects like so. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is update the saving inventory. Now, to do this, I went around trying to go with JSON saves, and then I was like, well, maybe I could just go with something a little bit more simpler. That way it's easier to follow along. And that's when I came to the point of saying that we wanted to use inventory scriptable objects instead. This will allow us to be able to save the data without having to create the data, if you know what I mean. So let's go ahead and go over to our inventory script. So if we go over to our scripts folder and go over to classes and then select our inventory. Now, if you don't have this, make sure that you go back throughout the tutorials and actually create all these things because they are necessary. Okay. So we're going to open up our inventory script. And if you recall, last time we had a system.serialize here instead of this. So simply replace the system.serialize with a create asset menu, and we're going to put in a menu name. So mine is underneath this pathway, but if you want to be able to change your pathway to whatever you want, you can just simply put create, create inventory, whatever you want, and that will be the button that you're going to be pressing. Okay, change this where it comes from to a scriptable object, and that's all you have to do now for it to work. Okay. All right, so head back over into Unity, and if we actually right click inside of, say for instance, any empty area in our project folder, we can go over to create, go over to our destination, and as you can see, we can now create a brand new inventory system, and you can assign the values here as well. Okay. Now, what we want to do next, since we have our inventory able to save data now, is we want to create some form of interaction system, right? So we want to go over to our scripts folder. You're going to right click and create a brand new folder, and we're going to call that folder an interface. Okay, so interfaces are really useful because they allow us to be able to interact with an object or destroy objects, whatever you want it to do, right? So I called mine IInteractable. You can call yours whatever you want. And we're going to open that IInteractable up. So let me go ahead and close down that inventory. So IInteractable is only going to call one void, which is going to be called void interact currently. Now, we may change this up later, okay? But for now, we want to be able to set this up with just interact, okay? So, as you can see, it comes from an interface, not a class. So just make sure that you put that inside there. And yeah, so that's all good. And we can actually get rid of all those if we want to. That way, this class is a little bit cleaner. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that up now. So return back to Unity, and what we want to do is go over to our containers folder. Now, the containers folder, if you recall, only holds the inventory holder script. And what we want to do is create a specific container for like chest, or if we want a specific container for like merchants or whatever, right? We want to be able to create that script inside of our container folder. So just simply right click inside here, go over to create C# script, and then you're going to call it a chest. Okay. So inside of a chest, as you can see, it derives from our inventory holder. And the reason why it derives from the inventory holder is because we want to have all the data that the inventory holder script has, right? And then we're going to make sure that it also has an IInteractable interface connected to it, okay? Now, you're going to get an error whenever you first put this in because it's going to be like, well, there's no function for our void interact. So make sure that you then type in your public void interact right here, which will then remove that error. And what I want you to do is type this in. We're going to get into the GameManager aspect of this afterwards, or into the next section. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab our GameManager instance, and we're going to grab a variable called the public inventory display. Now, like I said, we'll get to that in a second. And then we're going to get its inventory holder, and we're going to make it equal to this object. So if you recall, we had this chest that derives from the inventory holder script. So it actually is an inventory holder. It's just with a different class, okay? Then we're going to ask a question. So we're going to say if our current display is equal to null, so this chest, it doesn't have a parent object, or it doesn't have a display object connected to it. If it's equal to null, then we're going to set the display, and we're going to, let me actually just expand this out a little bit so you guys can see it easier. We're going to set it equal to our game instance dot public access inventory display dot transform. So basically this variable right here. Next, we're going to grab the instance, and we're then going to set this function to activate. So we're going to say display inventory windows, and that's going to be equal to true. Okay. So we're also going to require a component called type of box collider. You can set this up with as any collider. That's up to you. I just have it as a box collider because it allows me a little bit more freedom. Okay. So let's go over to our game manager. Okay. So I can go ahead and close that down as well. Now inside of our game manager, there's a couple new things that we have, which is all within this really nice little box. Okay. So we have two new variables. Both of them are public dynamic inventory displays. And one of them is the player inventory display, and one of them is the public access inventory display. So if I head over to Unity and go over to our canvas, remember how we had a inventory window, right? So the inventory window simply has our dynamic inventory display right here. And as you can see, it has an inventory holder, and it has our slot prefab. Well, we want one that is used for practically everything else. So if you open up a random chest, right, or if you talk to an NPC, we want them to all be displayed on that window instead. So if you go over here, you can see we have a public access inventory window, which is, like I said, our inventory window, okay? So right here, we just make sure our inventory holder is equal to null. That way we can assign it and adjust it whenever we want to, okay? And just go over to Game Manager and simply drag and drop those right on top of there, like so, okay? All right, so after you have those things assigned, we're going to create a function called public void display inventory windows, and it's going to require a Boolean, and we're going to call that bool display. Okay, so whenever we are calling this, we want to say, are we displaying the objects or are we not displaying the objects? Then we're going to ask a question. We're going to say if our current inventory or player inventory display is not equal to null, or if the inventory holder inside that display is not equal to null, then we're going to then set the onDisplay method for that dynamic inventory display equal to whatever this value is. So if it's true, it's going to display the inventory. If it's false, it's going to destroy the inventory. And we're going to do the same thing with the secondary inventory system right here. So yeah. And after that, we're going to, ask some questions. So if the inventory or if the display right here is equal to false, right, which means we're trying to hide the inventory, we want to first grab our inventory holder on this dynamic inventory display right here. So the secondary inventory. And we're going to make it equal to null because we want to be able to assign that value. And whenever we open up a new object, we don't want it to have a value. We want to be able to set its value. Okay. Then we're going to set the game state, and we're going to make it equal to game only, which means that if it's equal to false, our inventory displays are not showing, so we want to go back to the game. Then we're going to say else, we're going to set the game state to UI only, okay? So all that data should work perfectly. So for the actual interaction system, you can do whatever you want to do here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create or go over to my GM tester. Now, if you did not create your own testing character, that's okay. But all you really need to do is have some form of interaction variable. So I created mine called IInteractable, called interactable, right? And then from there, I simply ask a question inside my void update. It says, if I press the E key and this interactable variable at the top is not equal to null, then we're going to grab that interactable variable, dot interact. So we call the interface and we're going to say we're going to interact with that interface. And of course, as you can see, we also have this is open is equal or is open variable. This is basically for my whenever I call the inventory. So if you come up here, make sure it's a private bool. If our input.getKey tab, right? Then we're going to basically do the opposite of whatever this value is. So if it is open, then we're going to make it equal to its is not open. But if it is not open, then we're going to make it equal to it is open. I know it's a very weird setup. Then we're just going to simply set the value of our display menu or display inventory windows right there. We're going to ask if we're open, then we're going to return. That way we're not going to run this variable again or value again. That way we can't repeat the interaction over and over and over again. Okay, that's all that's saying. Okay. Okay, so at the bottom here, I set mine for on trigger enters. You could set yours to on collider enter, whatever you want to do. But basically what we're going to ask is we're going to create an interaction variable, and then we're going to cast to interactable, and it's going to be other.getComponent IInteractable, like so. From there, we're going to set our current interactable variable at the top equal to this interaction. So if this value is equal to something, it's going to set it equal to that value. Okay. And then we're going to do an on trigger exit. We're going to run the exact same thing, and this is just a double check right here. So if our interaction is equal to null, we're going to set our interactable equal to null as well. So that's all that we need to do there. So let's head back over into Unity, and you just need to make sure that everything is set up. So grab your chest, and if you don't have an inventory script here, just make sure that you come over to scriptable objects, create a folder for your inventory like so. Go inside there, right click, create inventory, new inventory. Grab your chest or whatever it is. Make sure that you change this from a inventory holder script to a chest script. So if I created like a empty game object and then just added a component and typed in chest, it now has that value here, and we just need to plug in our inventory like so. And then of course you could set up your display if it's the player. If not, don't worry about that. So yeah, that all should be fine. Okay, let me go ahead and delete that. All right, so that's all you have to do to be able to make everything work. Of course, I had added a little extra feature for my stuff because I had a custom editor script, and I don't really feel like going into that because that'll take a little bit too long. But basically, this NPC has a inventory script on it, and this chest has an inventory on it, and it can save and do whatever without any problems whatsoever. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, check out some other videos. If you have any questions, make sure that you leave those inside the comment section below, and I'll be happy to get to those as soon as possible. If there's something that you want to add to this inventory system, make sure that you leave those inside the comment section as well. All right, well, I'll see you guys later. Bye.